A young billionaire comes across hungry twin sisters, begging on the street, and leaves them in the care of his wheelchair-bound wife. But when he returns home, he finds her in tears at what they've done. Jack's Patek Philippe watch read 3:43 p.m. when he decided to do something he hadn't done in years: walk aimlessly through the streets of San Francisco. From the 47th floor of his office in the financial district, where he spent most of his days, the city looked like a perfectly organized chessboard. But down on the ground, walking on uneven sidewalks, it felt different. It felt real. Jack Morrison had everything money could buy. At 32, his artificial intelligence startup had been sold for billions, and he now ran a tech empire that never stopped growing. His face often graced the covers of business magazines, always with the same practiced half smile and the distant gaze that had become his trademark. That autumn afternoon, something felt different. The weight of emptiness in his luxury penthouse, with its view of the bay, seemed more suffocating than usual. Investor meetings, strategic decisions, endless video conferences, it all seemed to have lost its meaning. That was when he dismissed his driver, loosened his Hermes silk tie, and started walking. The neighborhoods changed as he moved away from the financial center. Mirrored towers gave way to older buildings, the luxurious storefronts replaced by modest establishments. Jack hardly noticed where his feet were taking him, immersed in thoughts about how his life had turned into a string of numbers in a bank account. That was when he saw them. Two small girls, identical as drops of water, sitting on the sidewalk in front of a closed store. They couldn't have been more than 5 years old. Their tangled brown hair framed dirty faces, bearing a maturity far beyond their years. One of them held a plastic cup containing a few coins, while the other hugged her knees, shivering slightly in the cold afternoon air. Jack stopped. Something about this scene kept him from doing what he would normally do: avert his eyes and move on. It was the girls' eyes that captivated him, big, green, and luminous, like uncut emeralds. Amidst the dirt and despair, those eyes shone with an intensity that hypnotized him. "Excuse me, mister." The voice was as small as the girl who produced it. "Could you help us buy some food?" The one holding the cup, he would later learn her name was Amy, spoke with a mix of hope and resignation that broke his heart. The other, Emily, remained silent. But her eyes spoke volumes. Jack hesitated. Years of cultivated cynicism in Silicon Valley had taught him to distrust everything and everyone. His rational mind started listing all the reasons this could be a trap, a scam, a risk. But there was something stronger than his reason at that moment. He knelt down so he was at eye level with them. Up close, he noticed details his privileged 47th floor view had never allowed him to see. The small patches on their worn-out clothes, the dried tear marks on their dirty cheeks, the shoes that were practically falling apart. "Are you hungry?" he asked, feeling how inadequate his own question was the moment the words left his mouth. Emily, the quiet one, nodded so vigorously that a few strands of hair fell over her eyes. Amy clutched the cup of coins against her chest, as if afraid he might take it away. "Where are your parents?" The question came out naturally, though Jack already suspected the answer. "Mommy's in heaven," Amy replied with devastating simplicity. "And Daddy left a long time ago." The silence that followed was filled only by the distant sounds of traffic and the thumping of his own heartbeat in his ears. Jack glanced at his $500,000 watch, his custom-tailored Italian suit, his Oxford shoes that cost more than many cars. All of it felt absurdly obscene in the raw reality before him. The girls exchanged looks when he stood up abruptly. For a moment, fear flashed in their eyes, as though expecting him to walk away like so many others before. But Jack was making the most important decision of his life. "Come with me," he said, extending both hands. "I'm taking you somewhere safe." Amy and Emily exchanged glances again, sharing that silent conversation only twins seem capable of having. After a moment that felt like an eternity, Amy placed her small hand in his. Emily, hesitant, followed her sister. As they walked toward his car, Jack was already making plans. His penthouse had 3 empty bedrooms that were never used. There was plenty of space, not just in his home, but in his heart. He knew complications would arise, legal issues to address, drastic changes in his life. But for the first time in years, He felt he was doing something truly meaningful. "Do you like ice cream?" he asked, trying to break the nervous silence. Emily, who hadn't said a word so far, gave a small smile and nodded. Amy squeezed his hand more tightly. When they reached his imported car, Jack helped the girls into the back seat. He looked at their faces in the rearview mirror, dirty, tired, but with a spark of hope in those astonishing green eyes. In that moment, he knew his life would never be the same. "I'll take care of you," he promised, more to himself than to them. "You won't have to beg on the streets anymore." As he drove toward his penthouse, Jack began mentally listing everything they needed: new clothes, proper food, a doctor, documents, a social worker. It would be a long journey, but something in his heart told him it was the right path. The emptiness that had haunted his existence was beginning to fill with something money could never buy: purpose. The sun was beginning to set over San Francisco Bay when Jack opened the door to his penthouse. The girls stepped in timidly, wide-eyed at the luxury they had never seen. "Welcome to your new home," he said, feeling both the weight and the joy of those words. From that day on, Jack Morrison would no longer be just a lonely billionaire. He would be the guardian of two little souls destiny had placed in his path. Sarah Morrison stared at the blank canvas in front of her, brush suspended in mid-air like an unanswered question. The adapted studio in the penthouse was her refuge, a space where physical limitations seemed less important. The large windows let in the golden light of late afternoon in San Francisco, illuminating her unfinished works and bathing the space in amber tones. At 30, she still had the ethereal beauty that had once made her one of the most promising artists of her generation. Her red hair, now shorter for practicality, framed a delicate face with deep blue eyes that seemed to hold stories words could never tell. 3 years had passed since the accident. 3 years since a rainy night, and a drunk driver had redrawn the contours of her existence. Sarah had been returning from a successful exhibition in Los Angeles, her name starting to gain recognition in the competitive world of contemporary art. A moment of distraction, the deafening sound of metal against metal, and then silence. When she woke up in the hospital, Jack was by her side, holding her hand as though she were made of crystal. He was the first to hear the diagnosis: complete spinal cord injury, T10, T12 vertebrae. In practical terms, it meant she would never walk again. In artistic terms, it meant she would have to reinvent how she created. "Art finds a way," she murmured to herself, repeating the mantra she had developed during months of rehabilitation. She adjusted her position in the motorized wheelchair, Jack's gift, equipped with every possible feature to ease her mobility, and finally touched the brush to the canvas. The studio was a testament to her adaptation: easels with adjustable heights, brushes with adapted handles, a work table specially designed to accommodate her chair. Jack had hired top ergonomic specialists to transform the space, making it not just accessible but comfortable. Her eyes settled on the framed photograph on the wall, she and Jack on their wedding day, 2 years before the accident. Sarah wore a vintage dress she'd found in a small shop in Paris, her hair then long and blowing in the bay breeze. Jack looked at her, as if she were the most precious work of art in the world. In some ways, that look had not changed, even after everything. The gentle sound of her wheelchair wheels on the wooden floor echoed as she moved around the studio. Her most recent paintings reflected her journey, intense colors and more abstract strokes, different from the delicate landscapes she used to create. The change was not just aesthetic, it was a reflection of her inner transformation. "Life is like a blank canvas," her art teacher used to say. "No matter how many times you have to start over, there's always room to create something new." Those words took on a new meaning after the accident. Each day was an exercise in recreation, of discovering new ways to express what her soul needed to say. The challenges were constant. There were days when frustration consumed her, when her fingers couldn't do exactly what her mind envisioned, or when exhaustion made every movement a monumental effort. But there were also victories. Her first exhibition after the accident, the online art lessons she began giving to other people with disabilities, and the blog she maintained about art and accessibility. Sarah adjusted the strategically placed mirror that allowed her to see her works from different angles, without having to move too much. It was yet another practical adaptation she had incorporated into her routine. Every detail of her life had to be rethought, reorganized, readapted. Her relationship with Jack also evolved. Their love, already strong, gained new dimensions. He never treated her with pity, something she feared more than any physical limitation. Instead, he became her partner in rediscovering possibilities, her support in moments of doubt, her companion in small daily victories. Sometimes, Sarah found herself wondering how different her life would be if the accident had never happened. Would she be exhibiting in international galleries? Would she have a studio in Paris, as she had always dreamed? But she learned that such thinking was a dangerous trap. The present was her blank canvas, and she chose daily to fill it with color, even if using brushstrokes different from what she had originally envisioned. Adapting to her new reality was not just physical. She had to develop a new relationship with time, with space, with her own body. Physical therapy sessions became part of her routine, as did regular visits to doctors and specialists. Jack insisted on hiring the best professionals, dedicating an entire floor of the penthouse to a complete rehabilitation area. Her relationship with art also evolved. If her creations had once been about what she saw, now they were about what she felt. Her paintings gained an emotional depth that surprised critics and admirers. Pain, overcoming, and rediscovery all appeared on her canvases through more vibrant colors and bolder compositions. Mrs. Morrison, the voice of Clara, her personal assistant, broke her train of thought. "It's time for your appointment with the occupational therapist." Sarah smiled, cleaning her brushes with practiced, precise movements. Routine was important, an anchor on days that sometimes felt overwhelming. Her occupational therapist, Dr. Martinez, had become a crucial ally in her adaptation journey, always bringing new techniques and tools to facilitate her artistic work. As she maneuvered her chair toward the elevator, Sarah reflected on how her idea of success had changed. Before the accident, success meant recognition, exhibitions in major galleries, and positive reviews in art magazines. Now success meant being able to paint for hours without exhaustion, inspiring other disabled people not to give up on their dreams, and finding beauty in her new way of existing. The sun began to set over San Francisco Bay, painting the sky with the same vibrant colors Sarah now used in her paintings. From her privileged view in the studio, she could watch the city transform as night fell. It was a constant reminder that everything is in perpetual change. The colors of the sky, the seasons, the paths life leads us down. Sarah adjusted her posture in the chair, a movement as natural as breathing. Tomorrow would be another day of discoveries, challenges, and, who knows, maybe another canvas filled with the colors of her new reality. For now, she allowed herself to simply watch the sunset, silently grateful that she could still create beauty, even if in a different way than she had once planned. The sun had already set when the private elevator to the penthouse opened. Sarah was in her studio finishing another painting session when she heard voices in the hall. One of them Jack's, but there were others, softer, that she didn't recognize. Intrigued, she maneuvered her wheelchair toward the living room. "Sarah?" Jack's voice held a hesitant tone she rarely heard. "Honey, I'm home and I'm not alone." When Sarah entered the living room, the scene before her felt surreal. There was her husband, still wearing his expensive executive suit, but with his tie loosened and his hair disheveled, holding hands with two small girls who looked like they had stepped out of a dark fairy tale, dirty in worn clothes, but with stunning green eyes that shone with a mix of fear and curiosity. "Jack!" It was all she managed to say, her voice barely masking her confusion. "I can explain," he began, running his hand through his hair, a gesture Sarah knew well, the one he made when he was nervous. "These are Amy and Emily. I found them on the street today." The girls partially hid behind Jack's legs, watching Sarah with a mixture of fascination and apprehension. One of them, Sarah still didn't know which, clutched a plastic cup with a few coins against her chest. "On the street," Sarah repeated, her mind scrambling to understand. "Jack, what exactly is going on?" Jack knelt beside the girls, staying at their eye level. "Girls, this is Sarah, my wife." "My..." She's an amazing artist and has the kindest heart I've ever known. Amy, the one holding the cup, stepped forward slightly. Do you paint pictures? Her voice was just a whisper. Sarah's expression softened for a moment. Yes, I do. Would you like to see my studio later? The girls nodded timidly, but Sarah quickly turned back to Jack. Honey, can we talk in the kitchen for a moment? Jack nodded. Clara, he called to the assistant who had been discreetly observing, could you stay with the girls for a moment? Maybe show them where the bathroom is so they can wash up. As soon as they reached the kitchen, Sarah let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Jack Morrison, have you completely lost your mind? You can't just bring children off the street into our home. They were alone, Sarah, Jack replied, his voice tinged with both defensiveness and pleading. Hungry, begging for money on the sidewalk. Their mom died, their dad abandoned them. And did you verify their story? Are you sure this isn't some kind of scam? You didn't see their eyes, Sarah. You didn't see how... He paused, searching for the right words. How lost they looked, like I felt before I met you. Sarah closed her eyes for a moment, taking a deep breath. In their 8 years of marriage, she had seen many sides of Jack, the ruthless businessman, the devoted husband, the generous philanthropist. But this impulsiveness, this was new. What exactly are you suggesting, Jack? That we suddenly become guardians to 2 children, just like that? Temporarily, he responded quickly. Just until we figure out their legal situation, see if they have relatives or... His voice trailed off when he saw the look on Sarah's face. Temporarily, she repeated, thoughtful. Jack, nothing about raising children is temporary. Have you thought about how this would affect our lives, our routine? And my condition? Your condition doesn't stop you from anything, Jack interrupted firmly. You're the most capable person I know. From the other room came the sound of childish laughter. Clara had apparently managed to make the girls feel more at ease. Sarah maneuvered her chair to the kitchen door, watching the 2 small figures, now with cleaner faces, as Clara gently brushed out their tangled hair. They're twins, Jack said softly. 5 years old. Amy's more talkative, Emily's quieter. But they have this incredible connection, like they can speak without words, Sarah finished, observing the girls' significant glances while Clara worked on their hair. Jack knelt beside Sarah's chair, taking her hands in his. I know it's crazy, I know it's impulsive and potentially complicated, but when I saw them today, it was like something clicked. Like I finally understood why we have this huge penthouse, why we've accumulated so much money without really enjoying it. Sarah studied her husband's face. In recent years, especially after her accident, she had grown used to being the one needing care, special considerations, adaptations. The idea of adding 2 vulnerable children to the mix was terrifying. But there was something in Jack's eyes, a certainty she rarely saw unless he was closing a business deal. They'll need clothes, Sarah said at last, and we'll have to adapt one of the guest rooms. 2 beds, proper closets. Jack's face lit up. Does that mean... It means I'm willing to try... temporarily. She emphasized the last word. We need to contact the proper authorities, verify their story, do everything legally. Jack kissed her, a kiss full of gratitude and promise. I'm already making a mental list of everything we need. A pediatrician for a full checkup, new clothes, school materials. One thing at a time, Sarah cut him off with a smile. First, I think they need a warm bath and a good meal. As if on cue, one of the girls' stomachs growled audibly, followed by embarrassed giggles. Sarah maneuvered her chair back into the living room. Amy, Emily, she called gently. The girls turned to her, their freshly combed hair framing faces that were beginning to show their real beauty beneath the dirt. So would you like to take a warm bath and then eat something? We can have macaroni and cheese and maybe... She paused dramatically. Ice cream for dessert. The girls' eyes widened at the mention of ice cream. Emily, who had barely spoken, took a small step towards Sarah. Could it be chocolate? Sarah felt something melt inside her chest. Of course it can be chocolate. While Clara took the girls for a bath, Sarah watched Jack making phone calls to his lawyer, to a social worker he knew, to a department store that agreed to deliver children's clothing even at that hour. He was in problem-solving mode, the same approach he used for sealing multi-million-dollar deals. "Jack," she called when he paused between calls, "are you really sure about this?" He sat on the arm of the sofa next to her chair. "No," he admitted with a crooked smile, "but I'm sure that with you by my side, we can make it work." Sarah took his hand, intertwining her fingers with his. Outside, San Francisco's lights began to dot the night, and somewhere in the apartment came the sound of childish laughter mixed with running water. Their organized, predictable life was about to change completely, and surprisingly, she wasn't as frightened as she should be. "Temporarily," she repeated, more to herself than to Jack. "Temporarily," he agreed, though they both felt the weight of that well-intentioned lie in the word. That night, while watching Jack awkwardly help the girls eat their macaroni without making too big a mess, Sarah thought about how life had a curious way of redirecting our paths. 3 years earlier, an accident had completely changed her life. Now, an impulsive decision by her husband was about to change it again. The sound of clinking utensils, timid laughter, and hushed conversation filled the penthouse that always seemed too large. Sarah observed the girls, now clean, wearing Jack's oversized t-shirts as improvised nightgowns, their brown hair still damp from the bath, their green eyes shining with what looked like hope. "Just for now," she murmured to herself, but in her heart, she already knew that some impulsive decisions have the power to change destinies forever. The first week with Amy and Emily brought challenges neither Jack nor Sarah had foreseen. On the first morning, Sarah found them sleeping on the floor beside the bed, the soft mattress apparently too strange for bodies used to sidewalk concrete. Emily hid pieces of bread under her pillow, a habit formed from the fear of not having anything to eat the next day. "It's so soft," Amy whispered that first morning, touching the Egyptian cotton sheets as if they were something precious. "Feels like a cloud." Jack divided his time between corporate responsibilities and a thorough investigation into the girls' background. His law firm scoured records and certificates, searching for any information that could explain how 2 children so young ended up alone on the streets. "We found their mother," he informed Sarah one night after the girls were asleep. "Elizabeth Parker, 28 years old, died of pneumonia 8 months ago. She was living in a shelter with them." "And the father?" Sarah asked, adjusting her wheelchair to face him. "Thomas Parker. History of substance abuse. Abandoned the family when they were 2. We still haven't located him." While Jack dove deeper into his investigation, Sarah faced the challenge of connecting with the girls despite her physical limitations. She found her way through art. She turned one of the studio walls into a collaborative mural, where the twins could paint freely at their own height while she worked at hers. "Each color tells a different story," Sarah explained, as she handed out brushes and paints. "Red can mean love or anger. Blue can mean sadness or calm." Amy, always more expressive, dipped her brush into yellow paint. "What about this color? What story does it tell?" "Yellow is joy, sunshine, new beginnings," Sarah smiled. "What do you feel when you paint with it?" Emily, usually the quiet one, surprised everyone by answering, It feels like home." A new routine gradually took shape. Sarah created a reward system for mealtimes, gold stars for every time they managed to eat calmly with good manners. 5 stars earned them a special painting session in the studio. Hygiene was another significant challenge. The girls were afraid of the bathtub, preferring quick, cold showers. Sarah turned bath time into an adventure, telling stories of mermaids and sea princesses, while Clara helped with the practical details. "Look at the size of that soap bubble," Sarah encouraged them, watching the girls slowly lose their fear of warm water. Jack, despite being busy with his investigation, made sure to be there for the important moments. Every night, he read bedtime stories to the girls, using different voices for each character. Sarah watched from the doorway, her heart warmed by the scene. The nightmares were frequent. The girls woke up screaming, haunted by traumatic memories. Sarah implemented a nighttime routine with a soft light and classical music playing quietly. "The piano notes are like little musical stars," she explained. "They light up the darkness with their melodies." Communication was a constant challenge. The twins had their own silent language, exchanges of looks and subtle gestures that excluded adults. Sarah began studying their expressions, learning their meanings. Emily wrinkles her nose when she's confused, she shared with Jack. Amy twists the tip of her hair when she's anxious. And I thought I was observant just by noticing they're identical, Jack joked, admiring his wife's dedication. Jack's investigation revealed more details of the girls' past. They ran away from the shelter 3 weeks after their mother died, he told Sarah. The staff said they were inseparable. And now? What's the next step? Legally, we need to notify the authorities, but... Jack hesitated, running a hand through his hair. What if we pursued adoption? Sarah looked at her wheelchair, then at the mural covered in colorful paintings. It wouldn't be easy. Your condition doesn't define your ability to be a mother, Jack said firmly. You've been more of a mum to them in 1 week than some people are in a lifetime. A noise in the hallway interrupted their conversation. Amy and Emily stood in the doorway, wearing matching pajamas Clara had chosen. Aunt Sarah, Amy asked shyly, can we paint today? The mural wants more color, Emily added, her voice more confident than in her first days there. Sarah felt her eyes well up. Of course you can, my little artists. How about painting a family today? The girls ran to the studio, their light footsteps echoing through the penthouse that once felt too big. Jack kissed Sarah's forehead before leaving. I'll keep investigating, he said, but now with a different goal. Not just to find out their past, but to secure their future. Our future, together. Sarah watched the girls preparing their brushes. Emily no longer feared dark colors, and Amy was learning not to waste paint. Small victories signaling a slow adjustment, wounds beginning to heal. On the mural, amidst bursts of joyful yellow and hopeful blue, 4 figures holding hands were taking shape. 2 small, one in a wheelchair and 1 tall with a tie. It was the portrait of a different kind of family, imperfect and precisely because of that perfectly real. That night, after the girls had gone to sleep, Sarah found more pieces of bread stashed under Emily's pillow, but this time, next to the bread was a drawing. 4 smiling figures, colored with the yellow of hope, the blue of peace, and the red of love. At the top, in shaky childlike letters, it read, Our Home. It was on a rainy afternoon that Sarah noticed the first significant change. Emily, the quieter twin, approached her wheelchair, holding one of the studio's brushes. Can you teach me how to paint clouds? She asked softly, but without her usual tremor. I want to paint the sky like it is today. Sarah felt her heart expand at that small request. It wasn't just about painting clouds. It was the first sign that Emily was beginning to open up, to trust. Of course, sweetie, she said, maneuvering her chair to the easel. Come here, I'll show you a special trick. Amy, who was playing with building blocks in the corner of the studio, perked up. Within seconds, she was beside her sister, green eyes sparkling with curiosity. First, we need to pick the right colors, Sarah explained, mixing shades of gray and white on the palette. Notice how the clouds outside aren't just white. They have different tones, like they carry secrets in their shadows. The girls watched, fascinated, as Sarah demonstrated the technique, their small faces intent on every brushstroke. Jack Meese, on his way to a video conference, stopped at the studio door, quietly taking in the scene. Now it's your turn, Sarah offered them the brushes. Remember, there's no mistake in art, just different ways of expressing yourself. Emily was the first to try, her little hand trembling slightly as she touched the brush to the canvas. Amy followed shortly, and soon the studio was filled with enthusiastic whispers and soft laughter. Jack cancelled his meeting. Sitting discreetly on a sofa in the corner, he watched in wonder as a transformation unfolded before his eyes. With infinite patience, Sarah guided the girls through the creative process, turning each brushstroke into a lesson in confidence and self-expression. Look, Uncle Jack, Amy suddenly called, noticing his presence. I made a cloud that looks like a bunny, and mine looks like a sleeping dragon, Emily added, her voice growing in self-assurance. Jack walked over, studying their paintings with theatrical seriousness. I see we have 2 promising artists here. I think we should schedule an exhibition. Sarah noticed the sparkle in the girl's eyes at the word exhibition. What if we hang your work in the hallway? We can host a special vernissage this weekend. What's Amy tried to pronounce vernissage. Sarah smiled. It's a French word for the opening of an art show. We can invite Clara and have a little reception with grape juice and cookies. The twins exchanged excited looks, their silent language now carrying notes of joy instead of fear. That night, after the girls went to bed, Jack found Sarah in her studio, working on her own painting. They're different now, he observed, gently massaging her shoulders. They're lighter, more childlike. Sarah set her brush down and turned her chair to face him. I noticed you cancelled your meeting today. Some things are more important than business, he replied simply. Watching you with them, it's like witnessing tiny daily miracles. They're the miracles, Jack. They're teaching me as much as I'm teaching them. Today, while explaining how to blend colors, I realized I was relearning how to see the world through their eyes. A soft sound drew their attention. Amy stood in the doorway, clutching her newly acquired stuffed rabbit. I can't sleep, she murmured. Emily can't either. Rather than sending her back to bed as they might have done in the first weeks, Sarah opened her arms. Amy ran into her lap, and moments later Emily appeared, as if sensing her sister's absence. How about a story about magical colors? Sarah suggested, settling them both in her chair. Jack pulled the sofa closer, forming a small, cozy circle. Once upon a time, Sarah began, there were two little painters who discovered their brushes had special powers. Every color they used transformed not just the canvas, but also the hearts of those who saw their paintings. The girls listened, spellbound, their eyes growing heavier with sleep. Jack watched his wife weaving the story, blending elements of the day with touches of fantasy, creating a world where art had the power to heal all wounds. When they finally carried the girls back to bed, already fast asleep, Jack noticed something different in the room. The pieces of bread Emily used to hide had been replaced with brushes and small sketch pads. They feel safe now, Sarah whispered, adjusting the blankets. They're finally beginning to believe they don't have to be ready to run anymore. On the bedroom wall, a growing collection of drawings told the story of this transformation. The earliest pictures were dark, with hesitant lines and isolated figures. But the more recent ones burst with color, showing 4 figures always together, 2 small, one in a wheelchair, and one tall with a tie. Sarah, Jack said softly as they left the room, I don't think I can imagine our life without them anymore. Me neither, she admitted, taking his hand. It's like they were always meant to be part of our story. We were just waiting for the right moment to find them. The next day, the studio gained 2 small work tables perfectly sized for the girls. Jack had specially ordered them, each with drawers for materials and a small gold plaque bearing their names. Now you have your own space to create, Sarah announced, watching the girls' faces light up at the sight of the tables. Is it really ours? Emily asked, running her fingers over the plaque with her name. As real as the love we feel for you, Sarah answered without hesitation. The words came naturally, and the moment they were spoken, everyone knew their absolute truth. They were no longer just an artist in a wheelchair and a workaholic CEO temporarily caring for 2 street children. They were a family, built with strokes of trust, colors of affection, and the ever-sharpening outline of unconditional love. Jack Morrison glared at the stack of files on his desk with growing frustration. As CEO of one of Silicon Valley's largest tech companies, he was used to finding solutions to complex problems. But now, after weeks of intense investigation, the answers he sought seemed increasingly elusive. Mr. Morrison, his secretary announced through the intercom, Detective Rodriguez is here for the weekly report. Show him in, Jack replied, quickly organizing the scattered papers. Rodriguez was one of the best private investigators on the West Coast, with decades of experience handling intricate cases. Jack had hired him the day after he found the twins, instructing him to spare no resources in uncovering their background. Good morning, Mr. Morrison, the detective greeted him, his tired face betraying sleepless nights. Unfortunately, the news isn't very encouraging. Jack motioned for him to sit. Go on. We expanded the search to all orphanages and shelters within a 200-mile radius. We cross-referenced data with child protective systems in 3 states. but it's as though Amy and Emily simply appeared out of thin air. Jack picked up one of the photos of the girls from his desk, a recent picture of them painting with Sarah in the studio. What about their mother? Elizabeth Parker. Rodriguez checked his notes. That's another dead end. We did find a death certificate for an Elizabeth Parker matching the approximate date, but the details don't line up. The woman we found was 45, with no registered children. How is that possible? Jack ran a hand through his hair in frustration. 2 children can't just exist without leaving a trace. Birth certificates, medical records, school enrollment. That's exactly what makes this case so intriguing, Rodriguez leaned forward. In my 3 decades in the field, I've never seen anything like it. It's as though someone deliberately erased any record of these girls' existence. Jack felt a chill run down his spine. You think something illegal could be involved? It's a possibility we can't rule out. Child trafficking, forged documents. These are scenarios we need to consider. The executive rose and walked to the window of his office. Below, San Francisco pulsed with its everyday bustle, unaware of the mystery consuming him on the 47th floor. What about the father? Thomas Parker. Another ghost. We found dozens of Thomas Parkers in the system, but none fitting the profile. We checked rehab centers, homeless shelters, even prisons. Nothing. Jack turned to the detective. How long until the authorities start asking questions? Honestly, it's surprising they haven't already. You're housing 2 undocumented children. Under normal circumstances, that alone would have triggered multiple alarms. Maybe it's time to consider other avenues, Jack murmured, more to himself than to Rodriguez. Adoption, legal guardianship. With all due respect, Mr. Morrison, without paperwork proving the girl's origins, any legal process will be extremely complicated. Jack took out his phone, showing Rodriguez a recent photo. Sarah teaching the twins how to blend colors, all 3 faces lit up with genuine smiles. Look at them, Rodriguez. They're not just a case to solve. They're 2 children who finally found a home, a family. I won't let bureaucracy or a mysterious past ruin that. The detective studied the photo for a moment, his expression softening. I'll keep digging. I have some contacts in social services who might help us quietly. Maybe if we can establish a plausible narrative. Do whatever it takes, Jack interrupted. Money is no object. Just don't find a legal way for us to keep our family together. After Rodriguez left, Jack remained in his office late into the night, reviewing every document and report, searching for overlooked clues. His phone buzzed, a message from Sarah with a video of the girls. They had put on a small puppet show, hand-painted by them. Watching their excited faces on the screen, Jack felt a renewed determination. The mystery of the twins' background was unsettling, but maybe what mattered most wasn't where they came from, but where they were going. At home that night, he found Sarah in her studio, working on a new project, a large family portrait. How did it go with Rodriguez? She asked, noticing his worried expression. Nothing yet, he sighed, sitting beside her chair. It's like we're chasing ghosts. Sarah paused her painting and turned to face him. Maybe it's time to accept that some questions don't have answers, Jack. What matters is the present, the love we're building. But what if someone comes forward to claim them? What if we find something that could tear them away from us? Then we fight, Sarah answered simply, with all the resources we have, with all the love we feel. But until then, we focus on giving them what they never had, stability, security, a family. From the girls' room came the sound of laughter and soft music. Amy and Emily had created a nightly ritual of dancing before bed, something Sarah encouraged as a form of artistic expression. You know what Emily told me today? Sarah asked, a gentle smile on her lips. She said she wants to be an artist when she grows up, just like Aunt Sarah. And Amy said she wants to be a businesswoman, just like Uncle Jack. But only if she can still paint in her spare time. Jack felt his eyes fill with tears. They really have become ours, haven't they? They always were, Sarah replied, turning back to her portrait. On the canvas, 4 figures were taking shape, united not by blood but by something equally strong: choice, love, and destiny. I'll keep looking, Jack said after a moment of silence, not to question who they are or where they came from, but to make sure their future with us is legally protected. Sarah nodded, understanding. In her portrait, the twins' figures were brought to life with vibrant colors, their expressions capturing the joy that now filled their daily lives. The mystery of their origins might remain unsolved, but their story, their true story, was only just beginning. Morning arrived much like any other since the twins' arrival. Sarah awoke to the sound of hesitant little footsteps in the hallway. Amy and Emily were still unsure about entering the couple's bedroom without an invitation. Jack had already left for the office, leaving a loving note on the bedside table. "You can come in, sweethearts," Sarah called, shifting in her wheelchair. The girls appeared at the door, already dressed in the clothes Clara had laid out, their hair still slightly mussed from sleep. "Aunt Sarah," Amy began, holding her sister's hand. "Can we paint today?" Sarah smiled, noticing Emily clutching a new paintbrush, a gift from Jack the night before. "Of course we can, but first, breakfast. How about pancakes?" The kitchen soon filled with the aroma of melting butter and children's laughter. Sarah had developed tricks for cooking from her wheelchair, and the girls loved to help, even though it meant more mess than usual. "Can I pour the syrup?" Emily asked shyly, surprising Sarah with her initiative. "Sure, sweetie. Just be careful not to—" Too late. The syrup trickled off the plate, forming a small puddle on the table. Instead of panicking as they might have in their first days, the girls just laughed and helped clean up. After breakfast, they headed to the studio. Sarah had prepared a special activity for the day, a large blank sheet spread out on the floor, where the three of them could work together. "Today, let's try something different," she announced, handing out paints and brushes. "How about drawing our family?" The twins exchanged glances, that silent communication Sarah was still learning to decipher. For a moment, she feared she might have gone too far, touched a still healing wound. "Our family for now?" Amy asked cautiously. Sarah felt her heart constrict. "Yes, love. Our family as it is now." The girls leaned over the paper with surprising focus. While working on her own part of the drawing, Sarah observed them, moved by how seriously they treated the task. The day flew by in a whirl of brushstrokes and soft conversation. Clara brought lunch to the studio, and they set up an impromptu picnic among canvases and easels. Late in the afternoon, when the golden light of the sun flooded through the large windows, Sarah noticed something special in the girls' drawing. In vibrant colors and childlike lines, their family was represented. Jack, standing tall, smiling in his ever-present tie, Sarah in her wheelchair with red hair shining, and the two girls, one on each side, all holding hands. But it wasn't just the depiction that moved her, it was the attention to detail. The flowers drawn on her wheelchair wheels, the little stars on Jack's tie, the identical smiles on the twins' faces. It was a portrait of love and belonging. Sarah didn't realize she was crying until she felt a small hand on her face. "You don't like it, Aunt Sarah?" Emily asked, worried. "No, sweetheart," Sarah sobbed, pulling them both into a hug. "I love it. It's the most beautiful picture I've ever seen." When Jack arrived home that night, he found Sarah alone in the studio, still contemplating the drawing. The tears had dried, but her eyes remained red. "Sarah, what happened? Are the girls—" "They're fine," she interrupted gently. "Clara is giving them a bath. Come see this." Jack approached, studying the drawing intently. "It's beautiful," he murmured, noticing each little detail. "You know what Amy said when they finished?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling slightly. "She said, 'Now it really looks like a real family.'" Jack knelt beside Sarah's chair, taking her hands in his. "Is that what's making you cry?" "Partly," she breathed. "Jack, remember how we used to talk about having children before the accident?" He nodded, his expression softening with understanding. The accident hadn't just taken her ability to walk, it had also taken her ability to bear children. "I always dreamed of being a mother," she continued, her hands gripping his. "After the accident, I thought that dream had died along with so many others. But these girls, Jack, they've brought something back to life in me." "Sarah, I know the investigation isn't going well," she went on. "I know there are legal complications, unanswered questions. But look at this drawing, Jack. Look how they see us, how they already consider us family." Jack stood and walked over to the window. The sun was setting over San Francisco, painting the sky with the same vibrant colors the girls had used in their drawing. "You're suggesting that we adopt them," Sarah finished. "Officially, permanently. Not as a temporary solution, but as a real commitment." From the bathroom came the sound of laughter and splashing water, Clara gently scolding them for whatever mischief they were making. "It won't be easy," Jack said, returning to stand by Sarah. "With no documentation and the mystery about their origins, since when have challenges ever scared you?" Sarah smiled, pulling him closer. "You built an empire from scratch. I learned to paint from a wheelchair. We can do this, Jack. We can give these girls what they need most, a real permanent family that loves them unconditionally." Jack looked again at the drawing, at those 4 figures united by colorful lines and a child's love. In the corner, in shaky letters, Amy and Emily had written, "Our happy family." "You know what?" he finally said, a smile forming on his lips. "I think they've already adopted us first." Sarah laughed through fresh tears. "So it's decided. It's decided. We're making this drawing legally real." At that moment, Amy and Emily came running into the studio, already in pajamas, wet hair, and bright smiles. "Uncle Jack," they called in unison, throwing themselves into his arms. "Look what we made today." Jack picked them up and carried them closer to the drawing. "It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Do you know why?" The girls shook their heads, curious. "Because it's real," he replied, exchanging a meaningful look with Sarah. "Just like the love we feel for you." Late that night, Jack stared at his laptop screen in his home office, dozens of tabs open about adoption processes. It was almost midnight, but sleep was far off. Sarah had already turned in, after hours of discussing the first steps they'd need to take. "Mr. Morrison," his assistant's voice came through the intercom. "Dr. Helena Martinez is on the line." Helena was one of California's most respected family law attorneys. Jack had spent the day trying to schedule a consultation with her, willing to pay whatever it took for her guidance. "Helena, thank you for returning my call so late." Jack Morrison asking about adoption law. "I have to admit I was intrigued," replied her experienced voice on the other end. "You mentioned it was a delicate case." Jack took a deep breath before explaining the situation, finding the twins, their lack of documentation, the fruitless search for relatives. Helena listened quietly, occasionally making notes. "Jack," she began after a pause, "I'll be frank. This is one of the most complex cases I've encountered. You're essentially housing 2 undocumented minors. Under normal circumstances, you'd be facing serious legal complications already." "I understand the risks," Jack said, raking a hand through his hair. "But we want to do the right thing. We want to give them a permanent home legally. The lack of basic documentation is our biggest obstacle," Helena explained. "No birth certificates, no previous school or medical records. We'd have to build their entire legal history from scratch." In the hallway, Jack heard light footsteps, probably Amy or Emily going to the kitchen for water, a new habit since they felt more comfortable roaming the house at night. "What do we do first?" he asked, lowering his voice. "We'll start by officially documenting the discovery of the girls. This involves the police, social services, the juvenile court. We need to establish a clear, well-documented narrative." Jack felt his stomach clench. "Is there a risk they'll be taken from us during that process?" "I'll be honest, yes, there is. Standard procedure would be placing them in a state shelter while the process unfolds." "That's not an option," Jack cut in, more sharply than he intended. "Sorry, Helena, but these girls have already been through enough trauma." "I understand. There are alternatives. We can request immediate provisional custody, given the bond that's already formed, and your obvious ability to provide a stable environment." The next morning, Jack shared Helena's information with Sarah over breakfast. The girls were still asleep, allowing them to speak freely. "Provisional custody?" Sarah asked, rolling her chair closer to the table. "For how long?" "Helena says it might take months before we secure permanent adoption, but provisional custody would give us legal rights to keep them with us during the process." Sarah took a sip of her coffee, deep in thought. "What about my condition? Could it affect our chances?" That was the first thing I asked, Jack smiled, taking her hand. Helena was adamant. Your successful adaptation after the accident, your active art career, and our stable family structure all count strongly in our favor. The sound of childish laughter interrupted them. Amy and Emily were awake. Jack quickly put away the notes from his meeting with Helena. "Good morning, little artists," Sarah smiled, opening her arms for the routine morning hugs they'd all grown to love. "Uncle Jack, you're not at work today?" Amy asked, noticing his unusual presence at that hour. "I have some important meetings here at home," he answered, exchanging a significant look with Sarah. "Actually, after breakfast, Mom and I want to talk to you about something special." He only realized what he'd said when the words were already out. He had called Sarah Mom. The silence that followed was deafening. The girls glanced at each other, their green eyes wide. Sarah froze, her coffee cup midway to her lips. Emily spoke first, in her soft voice, almost a whisper. Can we call you that, Mom and Dad?" Sarah felt tears well in her eyes. "If you want to, my love, if that's what your hearts desire." Amy approached Sarah's chair, her small fingers tracing the pattern on the armrest. "But what if someone comes for us, our other mommy?" "She's in heaven," Emily finished, her voice shaking. Jack knelt to face the girls. "No one's going to take you. In fact, that's what we want to talk about. Mom and I we want to make it official. We want you to be our daughters, not just in our hearts, but on paper too." "Like a real family?" Amy asked, her eyes bright. "We're already a real family, sweetheart," Sarah answered, pulling them both closer. "The papers will just let everyone else know it, him too." Later that day, while the girls painted in the studio with Clara, Jack and Sarah had another video call with Helena. The lawyer outlined the next steps: psychological evaluations, social worker visits, adjusting the home environment, financial documentation. "It's going to be a long road," Helena warned. "And at times difficult, but from what I've heard about the four of you, it's worth every second." That night, after the girls were asleep, now in a room decorated with their own artwork, Jack found Sarah in her studio. She was working on a new painting, 4 silhouettes against a sunset, their shadows blending into one. "Are you sure you're ready for this?" he asked gently. "It's going to be intense, with a lot of people questioning us, evaluating us." Sarah set down her brush, turning to face him. "Jack, since the accident, I've learned the biggest challenges bring the greatest rewards. Look at us. Who would have thought we'd find so much love in such unlikely circumstances?" From the girls' bedroom came the soft sound of their breathing as they slept. At some point, without anyone noticing, those sounds had become the most important soundtrack of the house. "Tomorrow I'll start gathering the documentation Helena asked for," Jack said, massaging Sarah's shoulders. "It'll be the first step of many, and we'll take every step together," Sarah agreed, turning back to her painting, "as a family." The waiting room in Dr. Martinez's office was a study in neutral tones and elegant furniture, designed to convey calm professionalism. Sarah adjusted her wheelchair for the third time in 10 minutes, while Jack flipped through a magazine without really reading it. "Mr. and Mrs. Morrison," the receptionist called, "Dr. Martinez is ready to see you." Helena Martinez greeted them with a professional smile. Neat stacks of documents spread across her mahogany desk. "I have some updates on the process," she began, adjusting her glasses. "The background checks are underway, but some issues have arisen that we need to discuss." Jack instinctively took Sarah's hand. "What kind of issues?" "Social Services is particularly interested in how you found the girls. The lack of official documentation raises red flags in the system. And," she paused briefly, "there are concerns about the adaptation of your home environment." Sarah felt her stomach tighten. This was what she had feared from the start, that her condition would be seen as a hindrance. "Our home was fully adapted after my accident," she argued, her voice firm despite her anxiety. "I'm completely independent in every area. And we have an exceptional support team," Jack added. "Clara, our assistant, has been with us for years and has built a great bond with the girls." Helena made some notes. "That's good. In fact, a strong support network is a plus. But we need to prepare for a series of evaluations: psychological, social, in-home visits." The following week, the couple found themselves in a marathon of interviews and assessments. Dr. Patricia Wong, the psychologist assigned by social services, spent hours interviewing each of them separately. "How do you imagine your routine once the girls start school?" she asked Sarah during one session. "We already have it planned out," Sarah replied, surprised by her own confidence. "The school we chose is 10 minutes away. We have a van with manual controls that I can drive, and for activities requiring more mobility, Jack and Clara can step in." The psychologist made a note. "And what about times of crisis? Medical emergencies, for example?" "We have a detailed plan for every scenario," Sarah explained. "My condition taught me the importance of planning, but also flexibility." The home visits were particularly stressful. The social worker, Mrs. Chen, examined each room with a critical eye, making endless notes on her clipboard. "Impressive," she said upon seeing the adapted studio where Sarah taught the girls art. "You've clearly thought of everything." "Sarah is the real architect of these adaptations," Jack explained proudly. "She turned every challenge into an opportunity for innovation." At night, after the girls were in bed, the couple often met in the studio to share worries and hopes. "What if they decide I'm not capable enough?" Sarah whispered one night, her hands trembling slightly on her wheelchair's rims. "If they think the girls need a mother who can run after them in the park?" Jack knelt beside her. "Then we'll show them how you taught the girls to see the world through color and art, how you turned this studio into a place of healing and love, how your wheelchair never stopped you from being the amazing mom you already are." Weeks turned into months. Each new document or evaluation brought a mix of hope and dread. The girls, sensing the tension, became even more affectionate. "Mom," Amy called one afternoon while they painted together, "can we make a special picture?" "Sure, honey." "Special how?" "To show the important people that we want to stay here forever." Sarah felt her heart melt. Emily, mixing colors on her palette, added softly, "We can paint everyone happy, like a real family." The finished painting became a centerpiece during the final home visit. Hanging in the living room, it showed the family in various moments. Sarah teaching the girls to paint, Jack reading bedtime stories, all of them together in the winter garden they'd created in the penthouse. "Remarkable," Dr. Wong said during that last visit. "In all my years of evaluation, I've rarely seen such a genuine connection between potential parents and children." Mrs. Chen agreed, closing her folder of notes. "The home adaptations are exemplary, and most importantly, you've created a loving, stable environment that's clearly helping the girls thrive." Finally, after what felt like an eternity of assessments, Helena called them in for a pivotal meeting. "The preliminary report is positive," she announced, a rare smile softening her professional demeanor. "The evaluation team was particularly impressed by how you turned potential obstacles into strengths." "So does that mean—" Sarah hardly dared to finish her sentence. "We still have a long road," Helena cautioned, "but the biggest concerns have been addressed. Your condition, Sarah, far from being a barrier, is cited as an example of resilience and adaptability that benefits the girls." Jack exhaled the breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "What are the next steps?" "We'll keep moving forward with the legal process, now focusing on the girls' documentation. But I can confidently say you've overcome some of the biggest hurdles." That night, the family celebrated with a special dinner. The girls helped Clara make pizza, and the penthouse filled with laughter and flour. "You know," Sarah remarked, watching Amy and Emily attempt to spin the dough in the air like real pizza chefs, "I think all these evaluations have only made us more certain of our decision." Jack, wiping flour off his face after an enthusiastic hug from the girls, grinned. "How so?" "Every question we answered, every adaptation we showed, every moment we proved our capacity to be a family, it all just reinforced what we already knew in our hearts. That we're a family," he finished, watching the girls now trying to teach Clara their special sauce-spreading technique. "Exactly," Sarah smiled, flour stains on her wheelchair attesting to her role in the culinary chaos, and no amount of red tape can change that. On the eve of the final adoption meeting, Sarah found Jack on the penthouse balcony. He was standing by the railing, looking out at the lights of San Francisco, a glass of whiskey untouched in his hand. The gentle bay breeze ruffled his hair, and his posture revealed the tension he'd been carrying for weeks. "You can't sleep either?" Sarah asked, maneuvering her chair beside him. Jack smiled without taking his eyes off the city. "I've been thinking. It's funny how life changes. A few months ago, my biggest worry was launching new software. Now I can barely focus in board meetings." Sarah reached out, gently touching his arm. "Are you scared?" "Terrified," he admitted, finally turning to her. "Not of the adoption itself, but what if I'm not a good father? What if all my money and influence aren't enough to protect them from the traumas they've already faced? Jack Morrison, the man who never shows vulnerability, finally revealing his fears," Sarah teased, hoping to lighten the mood. He sat down on one of the balcony chairs so their eyes were level. "With you, I can just be Jack. Not the CEO, not the billionaire. Just a man scared by the responsibility of being a dad. You know what my therapist told me recently?" Sarah scooted her chair closer. "That parents who worry about being good parents are usually already on the right track. It's that awareness of responsibility that helps us rise to it." From the girls' room, a soft light shone under the door. Amy had developed the habit of reading to Emily before bed. Short children's books Jack had bought, filling an entire shelf with colorful stories. "They've changed so much," Sarah remarked, her voice filled with emotion. "Remember how they were on that first day? So frightened, so distrustful. And now we have to limit their time in the studio so they'll do other activities." Jack laughed softly. "You've turned them into little art prodigies." "And you?" Sarah raised an eyebrow. "I can see how Emily is captivated when you talk about technology. She has the same curiosity you do." They fell silent, letting memories of the past months flow between them. Emily's first genuine smile during a painting session. Amy learning to help Sarah in the kitchen by naturally adapting to her chair height. Both girls rushing into Jack's arms every evening when he returned from work. "Sarah," Jack broke the silence, "do you have any regrets that we made such a big decision so quickly?" "Not for a second," she answered without hesitation. "Sure, we still have a lot to learn, a lot to adapt to, but when has that ever stopped us?" Jack stood up, walking over to a box he'd placed in a corner of the balcony. "I got something today. I wanted to show you before I show the girls." Inside the box were 2 gold nameplates, elegant and shiny, Amy Morrison and Emily Morrison. "For when it's official," he explained, his voice breaking. "I thought we could put them on their bedroom doors." Sarah felt tears well up again. "Morrison," she whispered, running her fingers over the engraved letters. "Our daughters. I had some other things made too," Jack continued, pulling out more items, personalized backpacks, matching t-shirts, even small aprons for when they paint with you. "Always the planner." Sarah smiled through her tears. "But what about the fears, the insecurities?" "They're still here," he admitted, sitting back down. "But I've realized they're part of the journey. It's not about being perfect. It's about being present, learning, growing together." From the girls' room came a small thud, followed by giggles. Jack was halfway to the door when Amy's voice chimed, "Sorry, Mom and Dad." Emily just dropped the book. They shared a look. Just months ago, such noise would have terrified the twins, afraid of punishment. Now it was just part of a normal family routine. "I think we should get some sleep," Sarah suggested, turning her chair toward the bedroom. "Tomorrow's a big day." "Wait," Jack stopped her gently. "There's one more thing I want to show you." He picked up his tablet, showing her the project he'd commissioned, a complete remodel of the winter garden to turn it into a family space. There would be an art area with adapted easels for Sarah and the girls, a cozy reading nook, and even a small maker lab Jack planned to use for projects with the twins. "It's perfect," Sarah whispered, imagining the possibilities for that space. "Like us," Jack replied, leaning in to kiss her. "Individually imperfect, but perfect together." That night, lying in bed, they continued sharing their hopes and fears in the darkness. They talked about school, about handling questions regarding the girls' past, about how best to help them process their trauma. "You know what scares me the most," Sarah confessed. "That someday they might think we don't love them as much as we would biological children." Jack turned to her. "Then we'll show them every day that love has nothing to do with biology." That family is about choice, about commitment, about being there through the good and the bad. A soft noise at the door interrupted them. Amy and Emily stood there, hugging their new stuffed animals. There was thunder, Emily explained timidly. Can we sleep with you? Amy added. Sarah and Jack exchanged a quick look before making room in their king-size bed. Within seconds, the girls were snuggled between them, their small bodies relaxing in the safety of closeness. Is tomorrow the important day? Amy asked sleepily. Yes, sweetheart, Sarah replied, stroking her hair. Tomorrow we take another step toward officially becoming a family. But we already are a family, Emily murmured, almost asleep. Here, she pointed to her heart before drifting off. Jack met Sarah's gaze over the girls' heads. In that quiet moment, they shared more than words could convey, their fears, their hopes, their certainty that no matter the challenges ahead, they would face them together. The family they had built didn't follow conventional patterns. A wheelchair-bound artist, a reformed workaholic executive, and two little twins rescued from the streets. But perhaps it was precisely this unlikely combination that made it so special, so unique, so truly theirs. The manila envelope on Jack's desk looked harmless, but its contents were about to shake the foundations of the new family they were building. Rodriguez, the private investigator, had requested an urgent meeting that morning. We found the girl's father, he announced bluntly the moment he entered Jack's office. Thomas Parker is alive, and he's in prison. Jack felt the air rush from his lungs. Prison. San Quentin State Prison, serving 15 years for international drug trafficking. Rodriguez opened the envelope, spreading documents and photographs on the desk. But that's only the tip of the iceberg. With slightly shaking hands, Jack examined the police records, old news articles, court documents. The story that unfolded was darker than any of them had imagined. Elizabeth Parker, Rodriguez went on, pointing to a photo of a young woman with green eyes, the same eyes Amy and Emily shared. 28 years old, an elementary school teacher. Met Thomas in 2017, married 6 months later. The twins were born in 2019. What happened to her? Jack asked, though he dreaded the answer. Officially, pneumonia left untreated, but the reality... Rodriguez hesitated. She was living in precarious conditions with the girls after discovering her husband's illegal activities and trying to escape. Thomas had cut off all her financial resources. She died for lack of proper medical care. Jack closed his eyes for a moment, fighting the surge of anger welling up inside. And him. Arrested 3 months before her death, an international operation, multiple charges, convicted a week after Elizabeth died. The girls were sent to a shelter from which they escaped. Why couldn't we find these records before? Someone tried to erase all traces, Rodriguez explained. Probably associates of Thomas, trying to protect the girls from rivals in the drug trade, but they made one mistake. They overlooked a prison visitation log. Elizabeth brought the girls to see their father once, 2 weeks before she died. That's how we made the connection. Jack's hand hovered over his phone, contemplating how to break this news to Sarah. There's one more thing, Rodriguez added, cautious. Thomas Parker still has parental rights. Even from prison, he could challenge the adoption. The office sank into a heavy silence. Outside, San Francisco continued its frenetic pace, unaware of the drama unfolding on the 47th floor. I need to talk to Sarah, Jack finally said, standing up. Keep digging. I want to know everything. Contacts in prison, possible associates still free, anything that could threaten the girl's safety. At home, he found Sarah in her studio, working on a new painting, a portrait of the girls laughing during a painting session. The everyday scene, so full of joy and innocence, made his heart ache even more. Sarah, he called softly. We need to talk. She recognized the gravity in his voice and put down her brushes. Jack relayed everything Rodriguez had discovered, watching shock, sadness, anger, and fear cross her face. That poor woman, Sarah whispered when he finished, trying to protect her daughters until the end. Sarah, we need to decide our next move. If we keep going with the adoption, Thomas can contest it. If we back off, Sarah cut him off, her voice rising. Jack, those girls are our daughters. It doesn't matter what we found out about their past or how complicated this gets. We fight for them. But if he tries to, he lost any right to them when he chose crime over family, Sarah stated firmly. Elizabeth died trying to protect them. Now it's our turn to continue that fight. Just then they heard laughter from the hallway. Amy and Emily were returning from a swimming lesson with Clara, their animated voices debating who swam faster. Look at them, Jack, Sarah said softly. They're finally real kids, unafraid, not hungry, not weighed down by trauma. We can't let the past steal that from them. Jack knelt beside Sarah's chair, taking her hands in his. We'll need specialized legal help. Helena needs to know about this immediately. Then call her. Hire the best lawyers in the country if we have to. But we don't give up. The girls entered the studio, their hair still damp from the pool, smiles bright on their faces. Mommy, Daddy, look what we learned today. Sarah and Jack exchanged a meaningful glance before turning to the girls with brave smiles. Those two little survivors had already endured more hardship in their few years than many adults. Now they had a chance at a real childhood, unconditional love, family. Later that night, after the girls were asleep, the couple held a video conference with Helena. The lawyer listened carefully to Rodriguez's findings. I won't lie, she said after a moment of thought. This complicates things, but it also gives us a clear direction. We can argue abandonment, negligence, criminal environment. Those are solid grounds for terminating parental rights. What about the girls' safety? Sarah asked, worry evident in her voice. I'm already reaching out to contacts who can discreetly monitor any suspicious movements linked to Thomas Parker in prison. You have the resources and influence to protect them, something their biological mother sadly lacked. Jack wrapped his arms around Sarah, feeling his determination grow stronger. The girls' past was a dark shadow, but their future could be bright. They would make sure of it. Elizabeth Parker died trying to give her daughters a better life, Sarah said softly. We'll honor her sacrifice. We'll give the girls everything she dreamed of for them, love, security, opportunities. And justice, Jack finished. We'll make sure the man who destroyed her life never harms these children again. From the girls' room came the soft sound of their sleeping breaths. In their dreams, Amy and Emily were just two loved, safe children, free from a past they barely understood, and their adoptive parents were determined to keep it that way, whatever the cost. The social services conference room felt smaller that morning. Sarah adjusted her wheelchair again, while Jack, impeccable in his suit but with dark circles hinting at sleepless nights, held her hand. Across the table, Mrs. Chen flipped through a thick file, her professional neutrality only heightening their anxiety. Mr. and Mrs. Morrison, she finally began, setting the papers aside. Over the past few months, we've closely followed your journey with Amy and Emily. We've conducted home visits, interviews, psychological assessments. And now, we've reached the final decision. Sarah squeezed Jack's hand tighter. Since discovering the twins' biological father, the couple had been on an emotional roller coaster. Helena had worked tirelessly to ensure Thomas Parker's criminal record would serve as a point in their favor, not against them. As you know, Mrs. Chen continued, cases involving children without proper documentation are extremely delicate. Adding to that, there's the particular circumstance of your condition, Mrs. Morrison. Sarah's heart pounded, but she kept her head high. Over the past few weeks, she'd meticulously documented every moment with the girls, proving her wheelchair had never hindered her role as a mother. However, and here for the first time, a small smile appeared on the social worker's face. Rarely in my career have I seen such a clear case of positive transformation. The girls have shown remarkable progress in all areas: emotional, social, educational. She opened a folder of photographs, Amy and Emily on their first day, thin and fearful, and now smiling and healthy, painting in the studio with Sarah, reading bedtime stories with Jack. You haven't just provided a safe, loving environment, Mrs. Chen continued. You've turned challenges into opportunities. Mrs. Morrison's condition, which initially concerned us, has proven to be a source of inspiration and adaptability. The girls have learned important values of perseverance and resilience. So that means Jack could barely finish his sentence. It means my final recommendation is entirely in favor of adoption, she confirmed, smiling fully now. Given the newly discovered family background, I strongly suggest granting you permanent custody. Sarah couldn't hold back her tears. Months of anxiety, doubts, difficult moments, everything had led to this. There's one more thing, Mrs. Chen added, standing. Please wait a moment. She briefly left the room, returning with Amy and Emily, who had been waiting with Clara. The girls ran to their adoptive parents, faces shining with anticipation. Emily, the social worker spoke gently, do you know why we're all here today? So we can have papers saying we're a real family, Amy answered promptly, while Emily nodded, clinging to the arm of Sarah's wheelchair. Exactly, Mrs. Chen smiled. And do you want that? Do you want Mr. and Mrs. Morrison to be your parents, officially? They already are, Emily said, surprising everyone with her clear, decisive voice. We just need the paper to say so. The simplicity and certainty of her response moved everyone in the room. Jack knelt to hug the girls, while Sarah pulled them onto her lap, not caring that her wheelchair barely had space for both. Well, Mrs. Chen said, clearing her throat, also visibly moved. Let's make official what's already in your hearts. I have the preliminary documents right here. Helena, your attorney, has reviewed them. All we need are your signatures. While Jack and Sarah signed the papers, the girls watched in fascination. To them, they were just scribbles on paper, but they felt the moment's significance in the adult's barely contained emotion. Mom, Amy whispered to Sarah, can we paint our bedroom sign with the name Morrison now? Sarah laughed through her tears. Yes, my love. Let's do it together. And can we tell everyone at swimming class that you're really our parents? Emily asked, her green eyes glowing. You can tell the whole world, Jack answered, signing the last document with a flourish. Mrs. Chen collected the papers, stamping them with a formality that contrasted with the deeply emotional mood. Congratulations, Morrison family. The process still has some bureaucratic steps, but the most important part is done. You are, for all intents and purposes, a family. Leaving the social services building, they found Clara waiting with a small cake and balloons. She had become an indispensable part of their unconventional family, and her tears of joy were as genuine as theirs. To celebrate, she said, handing the cake to the girls to carry carefully. On the way home, Amy and Emily couldn't stop making plans. They wanted a party to celebrate. They wanted to paint a new family portrait. They wanted photos with their new names. Watching them in the rearview mirror, Sarah's heart overflowed with love. Jack drove silently, but his smile said it all. They had overcome so many obstacles: her physical condition, the girl's dark past, legal complexities. And here they were, conquering each challenge with love and determination. At home, before cutting the cake, Sarah asked for a moment. She wheeled herself to her studio and returned with a covered canvas. I started this the day we found you, she told the girls, removing the cover. It was a family portrait. Jack, Sarah in her wheelchair, Amy and Emily. But it wasn't just a lifelike portrait. It was an explosion of colors and emotions, each brushstroke telling the story of their love, their struggles, their victories. Now it's complete, she said, signing the corner with the date. Just like our family. Morrison. Amy read the surname in the signature, sounding it out carefully. Our name now. Forever, Emily added, hugging her sister. Jack looked at his family, his wife, the resilient artist who overcame every limitation with grace, his daughters, who had turned their pain into hope, and himself, a man whose heart had learned to love in ways he never thought possible. The final decision wasn't just in the documents they signed that morning. It was in every smile, every hug, every shared moment. It was in the certainty that no matter what challenges awaited, they would face them together as a family. Preparations for the adoption ceremony turned the Morrison penthouse into a whirlwind of activity. Sarah set up a memory corner in part of the studio, where she and the girls worked on a special scrapbook documenting their journey together. Look, Mom, Amy exclaimed, holding up a photograph. This is from our first day here. Sarah looked at the image with a lump in her throat. Two scared, wary girls sitting timidly on the living room sofa. Next to it, Amy placed a more recent photo, the same two girls out, now smiling and confident, painting in the studio. "It's amazing how much you've changed," Sarah remarked, adjusting her chair to better see her daughter's work on the scrapbook. "We didn't change," Emily quietly corrected, decorating the photos with little butterfly stickers. "We just became who we always were inside." Jackie, passing through the studio at that moment, stopped at his daughter's words. It was stunning how Emily, once so silent, now voiced such profound thoughts. "Come see this," he called, carrying a mysterious box. The girls ran to him, curious. "The dresses for the ceremony have arrived." Inside the box were two identical light blue dresses with little embroidered flowers at the hem. Amy immediately held hers against her body, twirling around the room, while Emily ran her fingers over the delicate fabric, as if she couldn't believe it was real. "They're like princess dresses," Amy sighed. "You are our princesses," Sarah smiled, watching them admire their new clothes. "But do you know what's more special than any dress?" The twins turned to her, expectant. "The love that brought us here," she finished, opening her arms for the hug she knew was coming. The girls ran into her lap, a gesture they had perfected in recent months. Jack watched, heart full, and grabbed his camera, a new habit he'd acquired, wanting to document every precious moment, and photographed his three girls in a warm embrace. "Dad, too!" Amy called, extending her hand. They squeezed together for a selfie, laughter and hugs blending in the frame. Clara, entering with a tray of freshly baked cookies, captured the moment on her own camera. "Look at this family," she said, setting the tray on a table. "Who would have thought Mr. Morrison? The man who once lived only for work." Jack laughed, sneaking a still warm cookie. "Life's full of surprises, Clara. The best ones come when we least expect them." The days before the official ceremony were filled with meaningful little moments. Sarah noticed how the girls no longer stashed food under their pillows, how their nightmares had become rare, how their smiles now came easily and truly. One evening, while helping the girls with their baths, a task Clara usually handled, but which Sarah insisted on joining whenever possible, Amy asked a question that caught her off guard. "Mum, after the papers say we're Morrison, nothing can separate us, right?" Sarah felt her heart tighten. "No one and nothing, my love. But you know what? Even without those papers, we're already a family here." She placed her hand over her heart. "Like a work of art," Emily remarked, swirling the bath foam. "First, we feel it. Then we put it on paper." Jack, passing by the hallway, paused to listen. His daughters, so young, yet bearing a wisdom forged by life's hardships, and now by love. Their bedroom had also undergone changes. The walls, once decorated with loose drawings, now displayed an artistic timeline Sarah had helped create. It started with tentative scribbles in dark colors and progressed to colorful explosions of joy. "It's our story," Amy proudly explained to the social worker during her last visit before the ceremony. "Mrs. Chen smiled, making her final notes. "A story of love and overcoming," she said, observing how the girls moved confidently around the space, how naturally they interacted with Sarah in her wheelchair, how they lit up whenever Jack appeared. On the night before the ceremony, the family gathered on the penthouse balcony. The San Francisco sky was exceptionally clear, stars shining over the bay. "Tomorrow's the big day," Jack commented, handing out hot chocolate, a tradition they'd created for special moments. "But we're already a family," Emily said with her quiet wisdom, repeating the thought that had become their mantra. "Yes, we are," Sarah agreed, adjusting the shawl around her shoulders against the cool night air. "Tomorrow just lets everyone else know what our hearts already do." Amy, yawning but resisting sleep, asked, "Can we sleep with you tonight?" It was a special request, reserved for important nights or after a bad dream. Jack and Sarah exchanged a knowing look. This night certainly warranted it. Later, with the twins sleeping soundly between them in their king-size bed, Jack whispered to Sarah, "Did you ever imagine that impulsive decision to bring home two little girls from the street would lead us here?" Sarah smiled in the darkness, her hand finding his over the sleeping children. "Sometimes the decisions of the heart are wiser than any decision of the mind, my love." Amy stirred in her sleep, murmuring about painting something, while Emily instinctively sought her sister's hand. That was how they were, even asleep, always connected. Now that connection extended to their adoptive parents, weaving bonds no paper needed to validate, but which the next day's ceremony would celebrate with all the joy they deserved. The family court looked different that morning. Someone, likely Clara, had discreetly decorated the usually austere room with small, colorful floral arrangements. Amy and Emily, in their light blue dresses, held hands as they watched the judge with a mix of excitement and nervousness. Sarah, wearing an emerald green dress that matched the girl's eyes, kept a calm demeanor in her wheelchair, though her heart raced. Jack, flawless in his dark suit, stood by her side, occasionally squeezing her shoulder in silent support. "We are gathered here today," Judge Martinez began, her typically stern features softened by a smile, "to celebrate something very special, the formalization of a family that love has already built." The girls instinctively moved closer to their adoptive parents. Emily, usually the quieter one, surprised everyone by speaking up. "Can we call them Mum and Dad now so everyone can hear?" The judge smiled. "Yes, sweetheart, that's exactly why we're here." The formalities proceeded with touching solemnity. Jack and Sarah reaffirmed their commitment to love and protect the twins. The judge read the official documents, each word resonating in the room like music. "Amy Morrison and Emily Morrison," she pronounced their new legal names, "you are now, legally and officially, the daughters of Jack and Sarah Morrison." Amy was the first to cry, silent tears of joy streaking her cheeks. Emily hugged her, and soon both ran into Sarah's arms, while Jack wrapped them in a family embrace that spoke louder than any document. "Now," Amy sobbed happily, "now everyone will know." The small celebration that followed at the Morrison penthouse was intimate but meaningful. Clara had prepared all the girls' favorite foods, and Sarah's studio was adorned with paintings illustrating the family's journey, from the very first hesitant sketches to the newest, bursting with color and joy. "Look what I've got," Sarah announced, maneuvering her chair toward a covered canvas. When she unveiled the painting, everyone was left breathless. It was a family portrait, but not just any portrait. Sarah had captured each person's essence, Jack with his protective gaze, herself in her wheelchair with brushes in hand, and the girls, oh, the girls, they were depicted as they were now, smiling and secure. Yet their shadows showed the children they had once been, a reminder of the journey traveled. "It's perfect, Mum," Emily whispered, gently touching the canvas. "Like us," Amy added, hugging her sister. Jack looked at his three girls, his wife, the warrior artist who overcame every obstacle, and his daughters, who had transformed pain into hope, and felt his heart overflow. Who would have thought that a random walk through San Francisco streets would change their lives so completely? Later, as the small party wound down, they all gathered once more on the balcony. The sun was setting over the bay, painting the sky with the same palette of colors that now filled the studio. "What now?" Amy asked, settling onto Sarah's lap. "Now we start a new chapter," Jack replied, Emily dozing in his arms. "You both start school next month, and I'll teach you everything about colors and shapes," Sarah added. "And I'll teach you about numbers and computers," Jack said with a grin. "Can we just be happy?" Emily asked sleepily. "Yes, my love," Sarah answered, tears of joy shining in her eyes. "We can be very happy." The future stretched out before them like a blank canvas, ready to be filled with strokes of love, splashes of laughter, and textures of shared experiences. There would be challenges, of course. Sarah's wheelchair would always require adaptations. The girls still bore scars from their past, and Jack would need to balance work and family life. But now they were the Morrisons, officially, legally, and more importantly, in their hearts. "You know what else I want to do?" Amy asked, already half asleep. "What is it, sweetheart?" Jack asked softly. "Paint our future, all bright and colorful." Sarah exchanged an emotional glance with Jack. Their daughters, who had known so much darkness so early, now talked only of color and light. "And we will," Sarah promised. "Every day, every moment, every dream." On the horizon, the last hues of daylight gave way to the first stars. Emily was already sound asleep, and Amy fought to keep her eyes open. The moment was perfect in its simplicity, in its completeness. "Forever," Amy murmured before finally succumbing to sleep. "Forever," Jack and Sarah answered in unison. And there, under the starry San Francisco sky, the Morrison family, complete, official, and real, embraced not just the present, but all the possibilities the future held. A future to be painted with the colors of love, resilience, and the joy only a true family, built by love and choice, can create. It was only the beginning of their story together, but it was already, without a doubt, the most beautiful work of art Sarah had ever created, the greatest success Jack had ever achieved, and the truest home Amy and Emily could have dreamed of finding.